MER and ROAS. What are some of the upsides, but also more importantly, what are the downside risks you need to watch out for? That's what today's video is all about. All right, as we mentioned in previous videos, the difference between MER and ROAS is that media efficiency ratio and a return on ad spend are two different metrics that you should use in combination with each other. We prefer to use more on the side of MER because it gives you a broader view of things, a 30,000 foot view. And also media efficiency ratio is basically your revenue attributed to all your media divided by how much you're spending on media. So it's a true number that we use as our North Star. But both have their upsides and both have their downsides, and they are used together. Now, if you keep in mind that MER is also referred to as blended ROAS, which is basically all the ROAS that you're getting from all your individual channels blended up into one, which really is MER at the end of the day. So let's talk about MER's downside. The biggest downside here is that because it aggregates all of your marketing efforts, it gives you very little granularity into individual performance. Granularity, meaning you can't really know using MER, like which channel is the one that's actually pulling for me right now. And even so, there's going to be a lot of channels that you don't really know because there's no click. Views through conversions and just views just in general, we're thinking of top of funnel platforms like TikTok, like Meta, like YouTube, all of those channels. There's no click that's associated with it. So really, really hard to determine exactly which channel, even with ROAS. However, you can determine the effectiveness of all of your platforms together on those no-click channels, especially if you're using Tier 11 Data Suite, which you can learn a lot more about over at tier11.com/data suite, of course. So that is one of the downsides to MER. However, like I said, the upside is that it does give you a much greater view, a 30,000 foot view. Now, one of the big upsides of MER is that it really does help measure your omni-channel strategy. If you are one specific channel, MER probably isn't going to be as helpful for you because you're funneling all your efforts into one individual channel, or maybe you don't even spend any media. MER is probably not going to be something that you're going to worry about too much. You'll probably just be looking at those individual channels, like your organic channel and maybe your email channel. Talk to your team about optimizing those. When you get to a level where you have multiple channels all working together, Amazon, Google, Meta, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name it. Obviously, email is a part of that. Anything that you do on SMS, anything that you do on earned media. MER does not measure offline. And that's one of the keys here. It's like offline conversions or offline marketing efforts like billboards, like newspaper ads, television ads to a certain degree, although they can be measured, especially through OTT in a lot of the ways which a Tier 11 Data Suite does that. You can capture a lot of that data. The point is that for real true offline, MER isn't going to be able to capture that. However, the flip side is that it's going to give you that 30,000 foot view, and it allows you to really understand the dollars coming into your business and the dollars going out, especially if you have a hefty marketing budget and a hefty media budget. Now we go over to ROAS. The biggest downside for ROAS is that it can be manipulated. When I say manipulated, I mean that it doesn't really equate to your revenue within your organization. So the revenue that is being associated with your ad spend, especially when you look at it by channel or individually inside the platform, you will see money spent for a campaign inside Meta, for example, but then you will also see a lot of conversions, a lot of credit that's being given to that campaign, maybe actually bought from a Google ad, but saw a Meta ad. So if you're not familiar with the way that Meta works specifically, there's two types of conversions. There is a click-through conversion where there's an actual click on your ad, and then there is a view-through conversion where somebody actually views an ad. I see this all the time, and you probably do this as a consumer. You see something on Instagram, but you don't click. But then you go and you Google it, or you look on Amazon. Very, very typical. So did Meta play a part in the conversion or the purchase that you ultimately made? Absolutely, it did. However, the way that the platform works is it takes an outsized portion of that credit through view-through conversions. So there's a way you can actually break that down in the individual platform and inside Ads Manager to show view-through conversions versus click-through conversions. And it's a really effective way for you to measure your marketing based upon the click. It's almost a harsher, more stringent way to measure your marketing. So ROAS can be easily manipulated. The other part to it is that if you have an agency, watch out, because agencies love to use ROAS in order to show their effectiveness. You see this time in and time out. We see this almost dozens of times during the week. We talk to potential clients and ones who have had bad experiences with agencies in the past, is that agencies will use ROAS, or return on ad spend, inside their Meta campaigns or inside their Google campaigns, and then say, hey, look how great we're doing. We spent $1,000 this week and we made $10,000 according to the Google Ads platform. Well, they don't account for the fact that maybe the other agency is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on Meta ads, and those Meta ads are creating awareness at top of funnel, and the Google agency is just getting the last click for a branded search or for some high value keyword search. We see it all the time. We're talking to a company that is in the teeth whitening space, and literally they were spending $10,000 per month on Meta ads, but $100,000 a month on Amazon ads. And the Amazon agency was saying how great it was doing, whereas the real effectiveness, the top of funnel awareness, where they understood and where they actually became aware of the brand itself and the product, which is a really good product, was on Meta. But Amazon was taking all the credit for it, and the agency was saying, hey, that's us. Yet another downside of return on ad spend is a very channel focus. I would almost call this channel blindness. Is that something like the YouTube ad platform, which most cases there is not a click. It's an awareness platform. It's an education platform where people are going searching for answers, and your product might actually come up as a pre-roll ad, but they might not click on the ad, especially if they're watching it on their TV or maybe on their phone. They might not click anywhere, but then they might go Google, or they might see that ad later on Meta. And YouTube, by extension, does not look as good in the attribution platform because it didn't get any click. So keep in mind that ROAS can be easily manipulated, but it's also very, very channel specific. And that's one of the hard parts to it, is that if you just look at ROAS without zooming out and looking at the entire universe of all the platforms and how your marketing works together, you might get a skewed view of ROAS and make some bad decisions. Another downside of ROAS is that it's very, very hard to calculate NCAC. Now, if you don't know what NCAC is, that is the cost you are willing and able to pay to acquire a new customer, new customer acquisition cost. So when you are advertising on a platform like Google, for example, and you're using Performance Max, or maybe you're using Advantage Plus Shopping on Meta, very oftentimes think, hey, I'm getting new customers because I've put in my exclusions. I've excluded everyone who's visited my website the last 180 days. I've uploaded all my customer lists. And I'm sure Meta is just going to go out, and Google is going to go out and find brand new customers for me. Well, that is not the case. They take those exclusions with a grain of salt. They don't necessarily exclude all these users. Plus, there's a very low match rate whenever you do upload a custom audience list to both platforms due to privacy restrictions, etc. So the really important is to have really good lists that are scrubbed and that are purified as much as they possibly can be. Tier 11 Data Suite does that quite well. However, you're still going to get some warm traffic, which is going to skew your NCAC. So what you're getting is, instead of an NCAC, you're getting just a CAC. Okay? And if you're just selling to the same customers that you've always had, you're never growing your business. And remember, there's 3 ways in which you can grow your business. Acquire new customers, okay? Get them to buy more when they actually buy from you, and then get them to buy more from you over the long term, which is LTV. So if you're not familiar with all those terms, make sure you get our MPI worksheet over at tier11.com/MPI. Last but not least, downside of ROAS is this. We've seen this dozens and dozens of times, is that old school marketers who have grown up on ROAS, okay? Me being one of them. Certainly ROAS is like part of the vernacular of digital marketing for a really long period of time. 10, 15 years before we really got spoiled on these individual platforms where we could be very specific as to how they are bringing in money into your business. What oftentimes happens is that business leaders tend to fixate on ROAS. So there's this fixation issue. Hey, if we're spending more on Meta, I don't see more ROAS. I don't see, hey, I just increased our ad spend by 25% and our ROAS has not increased. If anything, it's actually decreased. Very oftentimes is the case. We talked about this in our last video. You have to factor time into this. So if you do increase your ad budget on one platform, you have to give that buyer enough time to matriculate through or trickle through your customer journey. And it might be 3 days. It might be 7 days. It might be 14 days. It might be a year. It all depends on what type of product that you're selling. Last but not least, one of the biggest downsides for ROAS is what we refer to as the whipsaw. The whipsaw is you see one channel working well and you up that spend. On the flip side, you see one other channel not working as well. I'm air quoting this, of course, and you decrease spend. Well, if you didn't have MER and you didn't have a blend of how all the channels are working together, you might be harming your business. So a great example of this is Meta at top of funnel. For example, one of our clients gets typically about a 1.7 return on ad spend on the Meta channel, whereas for their Google ads, I'm looking at some of their data here just off screen, they get about a 3.9 to 4. Well, if you're getting 1.7 on Meta, which is for every dollar I spend on Meta, I'm getting $1.70 in return, whereas on Google, for every dollar I spend, I get $3.92. Well, the typical type of person or the typical business owner, they might whipsaw their agency into, hey, let's spend more on Google. And then as soon as you spend more on Google and you spend less on Meta, all of a sudden your Google return on ad spend starts to decrease, even though you're increasing your spend on that platform. So if you look at all the channels individually, there's a reason for that. Most cases, top of funnel channels like Meta, like TikTok, like YouTube are creating awareness of the brand with a specific message. And we're going to get into that in future videos here, how to actually capture that attention top of funnel. And then Google might actually get the last click attribution as it's referred to, and get credit for the sale. When in fact, if you looked at them all together as a blended whole, as a blended ROAS, otherwise known as MER, you would then get a better view of how things are working within your business and how all the channels work together in order to scale and grow. So hopefully you enjoyed this week's video. Make sure that you leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future videos where we talk about business metrics that matter and growth that scales. There is such a misperception in the marketplace right now about how all these metrics work together and how digital marketing works all within an entire ecosystem, not channel by channel by channel. That's old school thinking. That's how we used to think back in 2016, which I hate to say is only 9 years ago here. Point is digital marketing has changed that much. You have to start looking at things more holistically and use these two metrics, use them together. Don't completely abandon ROAS, but obviously use MER as your guiding light because it gives you a much better view of how all of your marketing is working together. So that's metrics that matter and growth that scales. And I hope to see you in the next video.